Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
Tomorrow is opening day.
This morning, didn't have a great hunt. Deer didn't move like usual.
We just got set up in the middle of this bedding thicket. Saving the spot from the rut. It's a nice, I think it's a nice buck.
Boom! Hits a 170.
That was money. I think he's down right over there, maybe 10 yards.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy.
That OG real dream. Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast. That's right, we're here again, another week. We're not going anywhere. We hope you guys are enjoying because we're in it for the long run. We're going to let the haters eat. Here we go. We have Heath Cisco on. Badass deer hunter with a badass name. That's a sweet name. Shout out to him. Was it his daughter or his granddaughter?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, just put down an awesome buck.
Olivia?
Yeah, put down an awesome buck. Shout out to her and you, Heath. Way to get it done this early in the season. Props to you, man. So, this episode we dive deep into a topic that we've acted like we know nothing about because we don't know anything about the moon. We talk a lot about the moon in this episode, which was really cool. And we were still confused, and then he broke it down again. So, big shout out to Heath for coming on and teaching us something, you know. He's been hunting a long time. He's been super successful, and you can tell that he knows how to get on these big deer. To miss a deer and then to get back on them later, that's huge, man.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, props to him for putting all that, footage out there.
Yeah.
And letting everybody see it and see his up and down year. And props to him again for just sticking with it.
Because that's real. You want to see, you don't want some new hunter to, this guy missed. Well, then they be like, okay, if I miss, this guy's been hunting this long and he missed. So that stuff happens. But when you just show the good stuff, you don't, people can't relate to that, or new hunters, or people that might just they might have been a shotgun hunter and wanting to get into bow hunting or something, So,
right.
But yeah, he's from the Learning Curve guys. We had an episode with
Josh
McAllister. That was an awesome episode too.
It was.
The Learning Curve's putting out some big stuff this year, and I can't wait till the following year when they release this season.
That whole team's been putting it down from their Facebook page.
Yeah, the whole team's been putting it down. So we hope you guys enjoy this. Another thing I want to shout out that you guys will get to listen to this episode is you will get to listen to ways to keep calm when a buck's coming in, or tips that you can do to maybe help beforehand when that final 10 seconds that you have to perform comes down to it. So, all right, we're going to get into the people that make this possible. Let's start out with the VIP veteran. One thing I want to say is these broadheads, we've been telling people, we've been shouting them out for almost a year now. They are insanely sharp, guys. The broadheads are ridiculously sharp. We've had a lot of people call in, or that want to message us or call in and say, hey, where can I get these broadheads? So people are hearing about it. I just want to put a good safety message out there about these broadheads. Me and homie were shooting the broadheads the other day. I was shooting out to 40 and just smoking them in there. And I pulled it out, and I always keep one practice head. And I was putting it back together, and homie just barely bumped me and just barely touched that blade. And it cut 1/4 inch deep into my trigger finger, man.
Whoops.
Into my trigger finger. So just be careful with these heads. They are scalpel sharp. Sharpest broadheads on the market right now. So homie's going to get you with the VIP veteran broadhead shout out.
This week's VIP veteran broadhead shout out is Jacob Wade. Last week we had his wife Erin as our VIP shout out. So they are married and both served in the Army. Jake served for 9 years as an active duty Army engineer with 2 combat tours. He was medically retired in 2016 and recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in wildlife management and is starting to finally enjoy retirement and getting out there to go hunting. So, Jake, thank you for your service. I hope getting back out there and getting into hunting again is everything that you remembered it to be. And we want to salute you, man.
Yep. Thank you, man. We appreciate everything that you did from homie, me, and the Whitetail Legacy Podcast crew. All right. We're going to get into Ingram's Outdoor Obsession. So this is probably going to release on the 17th, we decided.
Yeah.
So with my track record being the 14th, 15th, probably going to have a buck there already. Or at least one of us will.
Yeah, hopefully.
So we're recording this a little bit earlier. Homie's up to bat tonight. This is the virgin set on a new piece of property. This is like the primo of the primo, all you got with a good wind, perfect access.
Everything's lining up.
Everything's
cold
perfect.
Front.
Right? Yeah, cold front came in. Everything's perfect.
The only thing working against us is it's super early October.
Yeah, and we're hunting out of a blind.
Mm-hmm. Oh, something we haven't really done.
Yeah, there's just nowhere to get a stand in, but you gotta have a.
You got to be up there.
Yeah,
I mean, the camera's on fire, so you got to be up there.
Got to be there. So, but yep, one of us are probably gonna have a buck there by now. I'm just gonna call it out. Next episode, you guys be able to hear if my prediction was true or not. Probably not true, but you got to dream big. I'm dreaming big. So. Check out Ingram Outdoor Obsession on Facebook, Instagram. Putting a lot of pics on there. The work that he's been doing. ECW calls. Homie's got a little something he wants to touch on. ECW calls here. I'm gonna take a drink of Cold Busch Light.
What was it?
ECW calls.
Oh yeah.
You're interrupting my beer drinking time right now.
I forgot my idea. Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, you had mentioned that you can get a deer's rack onto a grunt tube, which I hadn't even thought of, and it sounds like a badass idea. It's something that I think I'm going to do next year. I'm going to get a call with a deer, whether it be a shed or a trail cam pick. Definitely going to get one done up of a deer that I'm hopefully chasing and maybe grun him in on film with his last year's rack on the call.
Yeah, that'd have been like you just grunting chaos.
Yeah.
When he's like a 6-year-old.
Right. How sick would that be?
That'd be sweet. And you're like, yeah, I made this call for you, buddy.
Too bad he's a deer we just took to.
Yeah. Yeah. He's probably the deer that's going to be shot by homie tonight. Hopefully, dude, if you shoot chaos, I'm going to call into work tomorrow.
Right. We're not even going to be able to call in. No. We're going to have to text in.
Yeah. All right, we're missing someone. Scentlock. We're missing Scentlock. All right,
guys.
Go ahead.
We've been hunting early season here. We have the full season tactics and the real tree OG that Cody can't seem to say. So one thing I want to say about it is the ability to maneuver in the suit. You know, it's not really heavy, but it does keep you fairly warm.
Yeah.
I just had an Under Armour base layer on and the suit this morning. It was 47 degrees, 20-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah.
I mean, we sat till 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
So the performance of that suit, but to still be able to move within the suit, you know, step over a corn stalk or a down tree limb or through the grass.
Yeah, it's not bulky and slowing you down.
Yeah, it's not bulky. Was really surprising to me.
I really like the little details that they have, like the neck zips all the way up. Like you can zip it all the way up. It's not like some just like have a collar, you know. So on those cold days, you can get that all the way up, and then you get your neck gaiter underneath that. And then I also really like how like on the inside of the sleeve, they made it to where like there's pretty much nothing that would catch your bow, you know, if it shot. It's not really bulky, and they made it like a stretchy
like
material.
Like an Under Armour type material.
Yeah, like an Under Armour material that like 6 inches of where your release, you know, where your string might hit if you're wearing some heavy clothing.
Another thing I like about it is the back pockets.
Yeah.
They have a button, but it's a super easy button. So I put my wallet in there. I'm not messing around with that for 10 minutes trying to get a button so I know it ain't going to fall out. The button is super nice on the back.
Yeah, that's one thing Scentlock does, man. They perform in the scent elimination field, but they're just quality. Everything they have is super high quality. Just like that bag, man. That bag is I have so much weight in there right now.
Oh,
it's ridiculous. Yeah, that's another thing we can talk about. We need to make an episode about packing into hunt and how I do it completely wrong. So, yeah. My my pack with all my camera gear and everything I need to take in is 20 plus. And
Yeah,
when you're
I'm-
packing in a long ways, that's a lot, man. Like it's a
Walking
lot of
out
weight.
today, I was like, man,
Yeah.
dude, I got a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, we hope you enjoy this episode. We're gonna keep hitting you with whitetail knowledge here the next couple weeks. So we hope you enjoy. We hope you learned something.
Here we
And
go.
Here we go. All right, everybody. We got Heath Cisco on the line. How you doing tonight, Heath?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just like we were saying, we appreciate you coming on. We heard that you're a whitetail killing fool from the Learning Curve. We're super jacked to have you here to learn and to pick your brain about hunting big, mature whitetails. I mean, it's season now. We're out hunting, so I'm the kind of guy that if I'm not hunting, I'm listening to a podcast trying to learn something about hunting. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I hope that maybe somebody can pick up something from what I have to say. And who knows, you guys may say a few things as well, and I can pick up from it. So
Awesome.
Good deal.
So let's go ahead, just introduce yourself, talk about kind of how you started hunting and anything else you want to say.
Sure. Well, I grew up in southern Ohio on just a rural farm, and started out like most people. Dad was taking me squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting at an early age, and my dad wasn't much of a deer hunter, but my uncle was, and I can't remember. I was probably 8 or 9 when I got home from squirrel hunting one day, and my uncle said, look in the back of a truck, and there was a buck he'd killed with a bow that morning. And after seeing that buck, it kind of, I guess it changed my life forever. I started picking his brain constantly, and then my dad finally got me a bow when I was around 12, and I killed my first buck when I was 13, which wasn't much of a story, just kind of luck. The buck just kind of, I guess, ran in front of my arrow, for lack of a better hunt. I mean, it was just pretty much luck. But started hunting a bunch after that, bow hunting. Didn't have much luck. My dad grew up, when he was younger, there wasn't hardly any deer, so he didn't want me shooting any does. And so I was just targeting bucks, and, you know, I'd very rarely seen a buck. So I didn't kill another deer for quite a few years, and then so I didn't get a lot of that kill experience. And then when I did have a buck come in on me, I would always screw it up because I'd get buck fever or whatever. It could be a spike, 3-point, whatever. So as that went on, I killed a few bucks, and then when I was in high school, about my junior year, I met another guy who was as crazy about deer hunting as me, and we started sharing stories. And he was friends with a guy who had killed, I think, 6 Pope and Youngs at that point in time. And we're talking like 1986. So killing 6 Pope and Youngs back in that day was really something. So we started hanging out with him and talking to him, and he basically led us down a path, basically showed us how, you know, that deer use the wind, and I didn't pay any attention to wind when I first started hunting, and how they use the wind and the best time to hunt them. He said basically you had to hunt them the first week or 2 in November. Other than that, the big bucks never moved. So from 86 probably till early 2000s, that's how I hunted them. I hunted the first 2 weeks in November, and if it didn't happen then, I hunted, but I just didn't have much luck. And then, let's say, I guess in 1988, I set out for hunting trophy bucks. Well, I say trophy bucks, meaning something that was made the 125 Pope and Young minimum. And I was lucky enough to hunt a farm that had 4 potential bucks on it, and ended up killing one of them in 1989. I scored around 131 inches, and then since then I've been just chasing Pope and Young bucks ever since.
You ready for the fact of the podcast? Cody and I weren't even alive in 1988.
Well, that's what I mean.
This
I'm
guy's
a
got,
little older,
yeah,
so.
he's got all this knowledge. He's been hunting longer than we've been alive, man. We got to soak it up, man. Soak it up.
Oh, I love when you know, Cody and I will be at work and we'll be talking to some guy who's been doing this job for 34 years, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I hired on in '74," and we're like, "Dude, I wasn't even alive for 26 years."
Yeah, well, I'm getting older as the time goes by. So, but like I said, started out hunting, you know, mature whitetail. The buck I killed in '89 was a 3.5-year-old buck who just happened to score 131. And I did that hunting the first 2 weeks of November, hunting pinch points, funnels, different things like that, no bedding areas. And it was working okay, but it seemed like as much work as I was putting into it, I wasn't getting much out of it because I wasn't killing a buck except every like 3 years. And, you know, when you're targeting, you try to kill something bigger every year, it was tough. So I just thought that's how it was. I mean, you're reading these magazines, you got to be, you know, I took all this stuff in, and it just wasn't working. It was working, but it wasn't working for me. I wasn't happy with my results. It was just too much time in between kills. I would get 1 or 2 opportunities a year, and that would be it. So I was looking for new ways to change things, but, you know, I was just going along with what I was told, how I was taught. So then come along in about 2005, 2006, there was a show that, come on, I can't remember if it was on the Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, or what, and it was called Whitetail Addictions, and it was by the creator of Lone Wolf, Andre DeQuisto. And after watching that show, he's such an aggressive hunter, I had to learn everything I could about him, and I got these 2 DVDs called, let's see, Marsh Hunting Whitetail, and then what was it? There's a Hill Country Whitetail. I think it was produced by Blood Brothers, and now it's like the Hunting Beast and, let's say, Next Buck. And I watched those videos, and like I said, it completely changed my thought process and how I approached hunting. And it's been that way ever since. So I just keep building on that.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Like you say, the 130. I mean, and would you say 88? You said
89.
It was 89. Yeah.
I mean, that was a big deer back then, wasn't it? I mean, in the 130s.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that was a giant deer. I remember my grandpa telling me he loved deer hunting, but he stopped deer hunting and started coon hunting and stuff because there just wasn't enough game. You know, there just wasn't enough deer around in our area. So he just decided to quit deer hunting. But he had the passion for me, you know, and he'd teach me a little bit, but just like you, it was all the wrong stuff, you know, because that's how he hunted, and he was successful a little bit, but he wasn't in it like we're in it, you know, where it's a, you know, obsession and we're trying to target one deer. But yeah, those old videos, I can only imagine that's probably when they like first started really coming out, huh? Was when you first started watching them?
Yes.
I mean, to be able to see those hunts and stuff happen, you know, firsthand like that from the very beginning, I mean, the amount of knowledge that you could obtain would have been insane.
Yeah, because it was really the first instructional videos, and I still tell people today, they ask me, how do I get to this? How do I learn how you hunt and all this stuff? I said, buy these 2 videos, and they're the older ones. I think Dan Infall's put out new ones since, but these are the older ones. And I was like, watch these and learn from these guys, and you'll start figuring things out differently than what all these other people have told you. And that's what I did. I picked up on it. I put it to work, and it's been working for me ever since. I mean, you know, back always before the older videos, like I started watching the Drurys back when they started putting out monster bucks. And that was back, I mean, that was in the early 90s, I think, mid-90s, somewhere around in there. And it was just kill, and there wasn't much to it. You know, these videos basically go in depth and explain and just talk about bedding, talk about getting tight, talking about being aggressive, and hunting bucks instead of just hunting deer. You know, there's
I'm
a big
excited
difference.
to watch them. I've never seen either of those, so I'm going to look them up. I'm going to look them up and watch those. I'm sure they're on YouTube or somewhere you can find them.
I would assume. I know Next Buck still sells them, and the Hunting Beast sells them, but I think Dan completely redone some of them. I like the ones, the original ones, because it has bonus sections in there with Andre DeQuisto, and he goes into great detail on hunting and stuff, and he's just...
Yeah, I've heard just insane stuff about him. Like, he's just a mastermind. So.
I'm assuming you've listened to Dan and Mario on their podcast.
Oh, yes, I definitely do.
Yeah, very good information there.
Absolutely.
One thing that I'd like to hear you say there, you know, you didn't start hunting, you know, the way you're hunting now. Hunting is a transition through time. And, you know, I started hunting, you know, just shotgun only. And then I got a bow and I started bow hunting like I was shotgun hunting. Not much success because I couldn't get deer close enough to shoot them. But, shotgun hunting was no problem. I could shoot 50 yards, no problem. However, at, 16, 17 years old, I'm not really comfortable shooting a bow that I just got a year ago, at 50 yards. So it's glad to hear you start out like you did and to see your videos to where you are now, knowing that, if I keep going at it like I am, if I keep trying to learn, keep reading articles, keep reading magazines, keep listening to podcasts, keep watching videos, and like you said, just listen and pick up on the key factors that you can keep progressing in your deer hunting career.
Yes, that is a fact, and especially like when you get one of my problems was in the beginning was when I did get that buck to come in on me, I would blow the shot. And that was from lack of experience of shooting, let's say, deer. So, and it was one of the things my dad didn't want me shooting does back in the beginning because there wasn't very many deer.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a lot of kills under my belt. And then when I killed that buck in 89, then when I hunted in 90, let's say I missed one because I blew the shot when it come in. I got the opportunity, but I blew the shot. So what I've picked up on is it's nice to, in Ohio, we get several doe tags every year. And I love eating deer meat, so what better opportunity to go out there and hone my skills a little bit on shooting. And it's the difference of shooting at a spot on the target and shooting at a live animal out in the woods. It's totally different, especially when you're the buildup of 300 some days for hunting season, the buildup, testosterone, and everything you have to get to that moment. I mean, you get so excited. It's like they say, buck fever. I mean, I get buck fever bad. I still get it today.
I get it
that's
too,
why you
man.
do it.
Yeah,
I get it too. But like me and homie was just talking about that. I was like, this season, I think it's because we started this podcast, and it used to be like I was obsessed with whitetail, but I might do one thing a week. Like I might shoot my bow or I might watch a video. But now it's every day. Every day I'm talking to someone about whitetail. So this season, I need to go out there and shoot a couple does and fill my freezer, or I feel like when a buck comes in, I'm going to be so jacked up because I've been waiting for this moment. I've been waiting, and if it's a couple particular deer that I've been hunting for a couple seasons, then it's even worse, because then you're like, okay, this is it. This is the moment I've been trying for 2 or 3 years, to accomplish, and it's right here. So it's...
Well, it's just like, Heath, you'll be able to speak on this better than anybody. I mean, just watching the video that you guys put out, when a buck comes in and you shoot and we'll say you miss, which we've all missed. I don't care who you are. Say you miss. 2 minutes after you get settled back down, you're like, man, I just hope he circles back in. I'm going to be a lot steadier. And then, I've had one time where it did happen, and just rock solid, because the buck fever's gone because you've already had that first experience.
You already messed up once.
Yeah, you already messed up once. Yeah. So then it happens again, and then you know what not to do, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and you got to get your mind right. And a guy told me that a few years ago. You got to get your mind right when you're hunting. I keep referring back to trophy whitetail, but a deer that you're really wanting. Let's say no matter if that's a 100-inch buck or no matter if it's a 180, it's all own personal preference and along with the area you're hunting. You got to get your mind right. You got to understand that for these 5 seconds, I've got to do the right thing. I got to not think about the rack, not think about him, running off. You just got to slow everything down, settle your pin, and squeeze. And I like settling my pin and counting to 3, and before I get to 3, I'm about on 2, I'm already squeezing off, holding on the spot. And that's what I didn't do. And like we talked about before, on the new show that come out on the Learning Curve Outdoor Webseries that guys I work with, I blew it. The first shot on that video, the actual buck dropped about 12 inches, and you can see in the video. So I made a decent shot, but I just didn't aim low enough because it was around 33 yards. And I don't know if you guys have watched, Bill Winke's done studies on it. Somewhere around 30 yards, these deer, they can hear faster than the air travels. and they automatically load their legs up, which is dropping, to run off. And that's exactly what this buck did. I mean, he was making a scrape. He didn't have any clue I was around, and he still was able to drop 12 inches before my arrow got there.
Yeah, because he was quartering away hard, and, you know, he walked right by you pretty much, and, I mean, you had pretty much free rein on him, and then you release an arrow, and he just drops out of nowhere.
Yeah, and you've seen in the video, he didn't have a clue I was anywhere around.
No.
But when that bow went off, he was loading up and taking out.
No, I would have pretty much aimed where you aimed, I mean, if I was in the tree, because it looked spot on. You just don't account for him dropping 12 inches.
Sure. And then the second buck that I missed, the one I call hula hoop.
Hula hoop, man. Jeez.
Yeah, that was, you could ask my wife. I mean, I still cringe over that one. It's hard to get opportunities like that.
Oh,
when
man,
you blow
yeah.
them as bad as I did on that buck, it just really hurts. But I had that buck come in, and basically what I did is I pulled my bow back, and he came in on me on my right side. I was expecting him to come on the left, and you guys do any video and stuff with the camera arm or whatever. I do all self-video myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
props to you, man.
I put my camera arm on my right-hand side. So he come in on my right-hand side behind me, and I couldn't get my camera arm set up and my bow drawn back at the same time. So if you see the video, he looked right up at me. I mean, he heard me moving because I bumped the camera arm with my bow, and then he just backed out and he stopped, and I didn't have a shot. And then he was and what you guys don't know in the video is he was on my wind. I mean, my wind was blowing right where he was getting ready to walk. So I rushed. I was thinking in my head, he's going to win me. He's going to win me. So I rushed my shot. I didn't settle my pin, and I shot right over top of his back.
Yeah.
It's just
Man.
that simple.
I've been there before. I lost a giant on a bad shot, bad circumstance, rushing the shot. Like, okay, this doe just spooked. He's going to spook. I got to send it right now or it's over. You know what I mean? Same situation where you're thinking you're doing the right thing in the moment to make yourself successful, but then you look back, you're like, you know, there's a lot of things I could do different. But just like we said before, props to you for letting him release it, and props to the Learning Curve for releasing that stuff, because that's real to us. We talk about that a lot on the podcast. We relate to realism, and that's exactly that's real hunting. I mean, people miss. I've missed. Homies missed.
Mm-hmm.
We're not afraid to talk about it, because if there's a new hunter out there that thinks you go out there and just shoot deer and then misses a couple times, he's going to get discouraged if all he sees on TV is just guys just slamming big deer.
All he sees is Mark Drury just hammering buck
just
after
hammering
buck.
buck after buck, and then you see
You never seen Mark Drury miss,
yeah,
you know?
You see no misses like you guys are putting out, and then if a newer hunter's seen your video and he's like, well, this guy's been hunting for 30 years and he just missed. So it happens.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It's part of it.
So
it's part of it. You learn from it.
Huge props to you and the Learning Curve
Thank you.
for putting that out.
Thank you.
That meant a lot to me to see, you know?
Great. Well, like I said, we're a web series, so we can do what we want. And that's what we want to do. We want to show it real and how it happened and the screw-ups. I mean, because that's what, like you said, that's what people learn from. I learned from that hunt. Unfortunately, I missed that buck, and I get to watch it all the time, and it haunts me still to this day.
You got any trail cam pics of him this year?
No, that hunt was a couple years ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
oh,
and
man.
a set of sheds was found off of that buck, and we never seen him again. And what's funny is I wasn't in his home range. I was in basically what I would consider his rut range. He come into that area in that section of oaks on that farm every year around the same time, around the end of October, and he would stay there throughout November, and towards the end of November, he would disappear again. And he'd done that for 3 years in a row, and I never targeted him till that year. And I didn't know if he was going to show or whether he was killed or poached or died from EHD. I didn't know, so that's why I set out to target the long brow 10 that I missed in the earlier in the video.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's basically, I mean, like, when I set out each hunting season, like this hunting season, I've got a particular deer in mind that I'm targeting. And that's what I do in all my other seasons as well. I usually try to find the biggest buck that I can find that I have access to hunt. And I hunt that particular deer until there's someone kills him, he disappears completely, and the sign dries up, no camera pictures, no sightings. and then I move on to the next. But usually, like I got a buck now, I'm going to concentrate on him until the end of November. If I don't have him by the end of November, or if he disappears before then, if I don't have him by the end of November, I'll switch up to another buck, and I monitor numerous different areas. And if the conditions aren't right for me to hunt that particular deer, I'll go maybe sit back and observe on another farm, scout another area, always try to stay a couple steps ahead of the game for other deer, because you just don't know when this one's going to disappear or somebody else get him or whatever. So you got to have several in the bag going into the season, saying, okay, if this doesn't work out, I can go after that one. If that doesn't work out, I can go after this one. If not, you're going to be struggling as soon as something happens to your number one target buck. So that's what I do.
Yeah. Always nice to have the ones in your back pocket.
Always have them ones like, man, this would be a really great buck to shoot. I'd be super happy, but I'd be way more happy with this buck, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we play it. We got 2 bucks in mind right now that they're mega huge. They'll be our biggest bucks by far, probably by 30 inches.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's good.
Yeah. So we got them 2, and then we got a bunch of the 140, 150 class that if they step out, they're gonna get it too. I would tell a lot of people I'm at that stage right now where I'm really happy with a 140, 150 class buck with a bow. Super stoked with that. So
that's a great deer.
I'm sure I'll get past that over the years, of hunting. But I'm not ashamed that if a buck that I don't know that maybe 3.5, that's 140, 150, I'm gonna shoot that deer.
Oh yeah.
So that's just where I'm at.
You're crazy not to. Yeah. To each their own.
A lot of people would look down on me for saying that. That's a 3.5-year-old. He would have been huge next year. Well, I hunt a 25-acre piece a lot of times. In one spot. Is that buck going to be on my property next year? I have no idea. I've never had a buck where I'm like, oh, yeah, he's patterned. I had one deer that was like that, and then I messed up on him. I shot him in the rut, luckily. But other than that, I've never had a deer that I was just like, oh, yeah, I feel really confident about this buck, So I don't get that. So if that happens, I'm all over it.
Sure, and you got to put everything into perspective. If you don't have a lot of properties, and you don't have a lot of quality bucks, and you just hunt the biggest buck you can hunt if that's what you're after, instead of just maybe a deer or whatever. Some of these people down south, 110 inch is like a 160 in Ohio.
Yeah.
It's all just. I know some great hunters from down south that you look at their wall and you're like, man, they only got 130s their biggest heads, but they're killing them in places where there aren't even 130s. You know what I mean? It was a kind of a freak of nature. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some buddies in Georgia and down south, Texas and Mississippi, and, they're like 110 is a giant. And I'm like, I want you to come up here in Illinois, and I will set you in a stand, and I'll put you on a 110-inch buck. I guarantee you. I could do that every day in the rut. What day you want to come? Just name it. I'll put you on a 110, But it's just a different area, and it's different. But like I said, they got free rein to come up here, because if I hunted down there and that was a 130 was the biggest deer, I'd be just tickled to death to shoot a 130. You know what I mean? So it's just
absolutely
all based on where you're at. And like you said, hunt the biggest deer you can hunt. And if you accomplish that, then that's a huge goal. If you kill the biggest deer on your property, whether it's a 2.5-year-old or if it's a 5.5-year-old, that's a huge accomplishment in my eyes.
Sure, I completely agree. And like I said, I have several properties I hunt. I try to go out of state every year, but if 150 is the biggest thing, I've killed a lot of good deer, and if 150 is the biggest thing I could find, that's what I have to hunt. I may keep searching everywhere else and trying to locate bigger ones, but that's just what I have to go after. It is what it is.
Well, Heath, I want to get back to something that you brought up here a few minutes ago, is getting your mind right for the shot. I know Cody and I, we both work together, and I know last year, we didn't even have a podcast at this point last year, but Cody come to me and he's like, "Hey man, are you ready for season?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the grind." And by the grind, I mean you go. I took a week of vacation late October. I'm ready to go hunting and see maybe 5 does or see 1 buck or 2 bucks. So one thing that has gotten me into that mind frame is I get in shape right before season. And that's what prepares me mentally to endure the grind of not seeing deer, but still being able to get up every morning and go hunting and endure the slowness at times, you know. You know, some people be like, oh, well, you're coming off the October lull, you're not going to see anything. Well, then, you know, we're getting into pre-rut or whatever. But what gets you into the right mind going into the season? What are some things that you do?
Sure. Well, there's several things that you just mentioned. Getting in the right mindset for hunting season and getting in the right mindset for the shot. I guess I classify those as two different things.
Right.
Getting in the right mindset for hunting season is I set my goal on it. Usually it comes off of what I seen last year or what I have trail camera pictures of this year. And me getting older, I mean, I gotta get in shape too. I try to stay in great shape because it becomes a grind of getting up early, you know, going to your stand, hunting, scouting, moving around, moving stands, and then hunting and getting home late. And, you know, you got to balance, you know, family and everything else.
Right.
But you just mentally, you're going to be exhausted, but you got to keep pushing. But you got to peak at certain times, in my opinion. Me, I like starting out slow in the beginning of the season. Then I start building up, and then around the 20th of October, I want to be primed up. I want to be right there in it, and I want to be on top of the buck that I'm after. And I want to try to take him between somewhere around October 20th. It depends on what the opportunities are. October the 20th to around the 1st of November. And around in November, I mean, some people think I'm crazy for saying this. I hate hunting the rut. It's fun, but I hunt one particular buck in my home state, and that buck could be 2 miles away in a ditch with a doe for 3 or 4 days. And I'm out there, I feel like I'm wasting my time. So I hate hunting the rut. I want to hunt him mid to late October before he gets that rut urge and heads out another farm, 2 farms over or whatever. So I want to be completely prepared, shape-wise, stand-wise, all this stuff by around October the 20th. Now, I've killed deer earlier. It doesn't happen every year, but it just depends on what's happening. Like this year, it's going to be tough because we have so many acorns. So food is everywhere. So I know that it's going to be tough to get on a particular buck because they're just everywhere. I mean, they could be anywhere. So, and then like in November when I go out of town, that's all I do is hunt. You know, I call my family at night, I hunt, get up in the morning, I hunt. I may get down and scout. Usually I don't because it's November and I'm hunting pinches and normal rut hunts, doe bedding areas, pinch points, travel corridors, stuff like that. And then when I get back from my out-of-state hunt, usually late November, I try to hit it again around when I get back around the 18th, somewhere around there to Thanksgiving, I hit it pretty hard. And then during our gun season comes in the first Monday after Thanksgiving, so I kind of lay back. And then it's mainly an evening game after that for me through December and January if I'm still holding the tag. So that's, I guess, preparing for season. But I'm always doing something. I'm always running mineral licks, running cameras, trying to stay in shape the best I can. Then when we were talking about the mental thing for the shot, it's basically when you have that buck that you've been anticipating and wanting for the last 3 or 4 months, let's say it's 6 months because you've been looking forward to shooting him since last season, let's say, or whatever. And he comes in, all that anticipation is built up. And me, I'm sure it happens with a lot of other people, you know, I get really excited and I could possibly blow my opportunity. So what I do is I try to think of it as more like a job. Let's say I come in here to get it done. I didn't come in here to get all tore up and all this stuff and just see the buck. I come in here to kill it. So I get in the killer mindset. If I'm taking this deer, he just has to give me an opportunity. And when he does give me that opportunity, I bury the pin. And like I said, I usually count 2 to 3 and I release it. And then after that happens, you know, I let everything go. That's when I start getting excited. The buck river comes on and all that stuff because I still get jacked up. I mean, as much, if not more than anyone. So, but before that moment happens, I make sure it's all business until it happens, until I pull that, put that shot on that deer. And after that, then we can celebrate, do whatever. So,
Yeah, a lot of people like to say, they'll stop hunting when they get that buck fever, but from your videos, man, I don't think you're ever going to stop because you get that buck fever every time.
absolutely, it's all part of it. I mean, that's why we do it. We're looking for that 3 to 4 second adrenaline rush. It's something else.
I wish it lasted longer.
What'd you say again?
I said I wish it lasted longer.
Well, you get to, I get to kick back in the easy chair and look at them on the wall and just replay all the hunts. And now, since I've been videoing, all self-videoing all my hunts now, I get to replay them, so it's very nice.
Yeah, that is super cool. Just to relate where I'm coming from on getting your mind right. Losing weight's not easy. You have bad days, you have good days, and it's the same in hunting. You have good days, you have bad days, especially when you take a week off. You see a lot of deer moving, and then you think they're going to be moving over here, and you make that move, and then they don't, and you have to kind of regroup yourself and find the tenacity to keep going. So I like how you use the word kill. We're not out there to do a beautiful thing. We're out there to kill these deer. And is that something that you've always used, or is that something new?
Well, I mean, I've blew so many shots over the years. I had to keep honing that. So I would put in all this time and effort and blow the opportunity, and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I out here if I can't make it happen on that last 3 or 4 seconds? So I got into mind. I just got ingrained in my mind. I'm out here. Every time I go, I anticipate that I'm going to kill that deer. It's going to happen. You have to be on your toes and be prepared. I don't know how many times me and other people have sat out there and just next thing you know, they're lollygagging around, screwing around on their phone, and the deer appears. And you're not ready. You have to be in the mindset that it's going to happen, and you better be prepared. And I'm out there to kill it. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm out here to kill a particular buck, and that's what I'm doing. And that's what I have in my mindset now. I know that as well, some deer have, let's say, a sixth sense, and they can sense danger. So I'm borderline on that. You know what I mean? I want to have the killer instinct, but then again, I don't want to be so jacked up to where, I could send off, let's say, bad vibes or brainwaves or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm a little on edge about that stuff because I do believe that they do have a sixth sense. So, I mean, it's just like, a dog can tell when you're upset. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They can read that on you, and I don't want to portray that, but I'm out there for a job. I'm out there to get that job done, and that job is to kill that deer.
Yeah, we like when people say that because that's what we do. Don't sugarcoat it. We're out there. This is what we do. We feed our family with this meat. This is our passion, and just like you, I could tell that me and you could talk for hours because we're into it. We want to go deep. We want to learn, and one thing that you want to talk about. When you brought it up, I said, what's some stuff you want to talk about? I was super jacked when you said moon, because I don't know how many episodes me and homie have looked like, just like we don't know anything about hunting because we know nothing about the moon. I've listened to, Mark and Terry Drury talk about it, but I'm still confused on it. So I really want to dig your mind on it a little bit and see what a normal guy who's not maybe have the ground that the juries have has seen the moon do and affecting us hunting-wise.
Gotcha. Well, I got basically introduced to the moon, through fishing, basically. I mean, I used the moon times and stuff as in the old Farmer's Almanac for fishing, great times for fishing. And that kind of was pretty good, but, it was still weather dependent. And then way back, I can't remember when it was, Jeff Murray had come out with the Moonbeams, I think was the book. And he had Miles Keller in it. And everybody in the hunting industry knows Miles Keller. I mean, Miles Keller was killing big deer back when I was a baby even. So I was real curious about reading up on Miles Keller, so I got this Moonbeams book, and I started reading about it, and then I started buying the Moon Guide, and now Jeff Murray has since passed, and Adam Hayes picked it up, and he's selling it now. And I listened, I watched it a little bit, I paid attention, comparing it to how I was hunting and stuff, but I didn't really know a lot about it, I didn't really understand it. And then, like I said, back in 2006, it all comes back to when Whitetail Addictions comes out, and Andre DeQuisto was talking about how the Moon Guide is so spot on. And he talked about how hunting the moon times and when he was killing certain deer. And he basically, and what I was confused about, he said if the Moon Guide says the deer are feeding in the morning, you need to hunt their bed. And because they're out in the fields and they're going to be coming back to their beds late. So it all started making a little bit of sense, and I started comparing it. I still hunt all the time, but I don't hunt my really good spots or get really aggressive unless the moon tells me I should get aggressive. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, direct, sense. I've looked at the Moon Guide multiple times, and I've almost bid on it, but I'm just like, my big thing is I guess I don't understand it enough to bite on it. You know what I mean? I know they tried, like I've seen the commercial for it and stuff, multiple times, but I'm still confused on exactly what it does. So you're saying if the moon is rising, hunt their beds? Is that what you said?
Well, I said if the moon times say they're going to be feeding in the morning, when I'm talking about the first couple hours of daylight, the deer are going to be up on their feet and they're going to be farther away from their bed. That means they're going to be getting back to their beds after daylight.
Okay. I see.
So in that case, you have a better chance of, if you're hunting a bedding area, not going in there an hour before daylight and blowing deer out of the bedding area because they'll already beat you back there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It has them feeding in the morning. They're still out in the crop fields or the edge of the fields or whatever feeding. So you can slip into them bedding areas if you already have everything pre-hung and all that good stuff and get away with getting in there and then them working their way back in, let's say a half an hour after daylight, hour or two after daylight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A lot of times if the moon says that they're bedded, well, then you can't go into a bedding area hunt because they're already there. So you're just going to blow them out of there when you go in.
Okay.
So looking at the moon dial, basically, this is what I do. I mean, I like the moon dial that Adam Hayes puts out now because to me, it's simple and it takes out all the legwork of me looking at different moon charts and all that crap. So basically what I do is I look at it, and on the outside of the dial is red moon days, as Adam calls them, the red moon. Those are the days that the deer will be more active a couple hours in the morning or a couple hours in the evening. So basically that's when the moon is going to be overhead towards the evening hours when we'll be hunting or towards the morning hours when we would be hunting and, maximum deer activity would be taking place. And if you look at the times basically, the red times is when the moon's overhead and the black times is when the moon's underfoot. Now, they always said that the best times for deer movement is when the moon is overhead. So it's the red times on that dial. And if you can get those red times, you look at them certain days, when it's towards the evening, let's say the last couple hours of daylight, or the first couple hours in the morning, that's when you're going to have maximum deer activity per the moon. Now, the weather and everything else affects this. So I think a lot of times people take this moon dial and they say, it doesn't work. Well, most of the time they're hunting in the wrong spots for it to work. Or they're hunting, or a weather front came through and it screwed up the whole moon dial in the first place. So you can just throw that out the window for that day or that time period. Because the moon dial is great, but weather will trump the moon at any point in time. It depends on what type of front it is.
I see. So weather before.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've always heard weather, wind, direction, then moon is what I've always heard, but
So I look at several things, I look at the moon. I mainly look at the moon, but if I got a weather front that comes through, I'm jumping on that weather front. And I'm not saying I'm hunting before the front, because hunting before a front is tough because a lot of times the deer know it way before you do, and they're up and moving by the time you get in there to hunt if you're trying to catch it before the front. So I like I can get more consistent movement and stuff if I hunt after a front. Let's say if a storm breaks at noon, that evening, if it rained all morning and up into the afternoon, if that storm breaks at noon and the moon dial tells me it's going to be great evening activity and the storm just broke at noon, that evening's going to be red hot.
Yeah, sign me up.
Yes, absolutely. It's the same way for a morning. If that storm breaks, let's say an hour or 2 or 3 hours after dark, and the next day is supposed to be, a nice, clear day, and the wind direction has already changed, from the storm front back to where it was normally, and the moon dial says they're going to be out feeding in the morning, you can jump in and hunt your best spot because you're going to be able to get in there ahead of the deer, and you're going to catch that movement.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down for me. I understand it a lot better from you saying that than I have watching the videos. I wasn't thinking that hunting the beds is what they were doing. I was thinking it was just hunting in general, but hunting the beds makes a lot more sense because if those deer are going to be up moving later in the day, you could get in there,
right?
So you saying that helped me out a lot,
Well, basically when you're hunting a big buck, like early season or whatever, they're going to be getting back to their beds way before daylight. You can go in there and try to hunt that bedding area or try to hunt these staging areas or whatever, or the areas that are traveling in between feed and bed, try to hunt that. A lot of times they're already past you before it ever gets daylight. And I'm not saying jump in and hunt the beds. I'm saying that at certain time periods, but maybe not right off the bat. So you'll go in and hunt and you'll think, the morning was dead. Well, you was too far away from where they was actually bedding to see the movement. Because let's say the moon time was bad and they had already come past that area, let's say, and made it into that bedding area, maybe 100 to 200 yards from their actual bed before it even got daylight. The same way in the evening, if the moon time, let's say, isn't good and there's no weather front coming through, well, that buck will get up out of his bed and he may only move 50 to 80 yards from his bed. And let's say you're hunting 250 yards off, maybe 500 yards off on the edge of this food source where he's coming to. Well, you think the movement was dead because he never got there. But if he is triggered, let's say if the moon says that they're going to be moving great that evening, it's a red moon, the moon's going to be overhead, let's say it gets dark at 7 o'clock, the moon's going to be overhead at 6. You could still hunt that field edge and not see him. But he, instead of traveling 80 to 100 yards from his bed, he probably traveled 200 to 250 yards from his bed because of the moon was, let's say, pushing him, making him get up earlier, making him be more active. But still, you could be sitting along the edge of that field and think, well, heck, the movement was crap. You're just hunting the wrong spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Perfect sense. So,
because I don't hunt the beds a lot, but I do at times. But I do it when the time is right. Now, it could be a crappy moon phase, but the weather front broke late at night, so I could jump in and hunt that bed. It's bedding area, let's say, and catch that movement coming back in. But if I just go in there nonchalantly, not paying attention to the moon or the weather, I'm probably going to go in there and blow him out, even if I go in there an hour early, because he already made it back.
Yeah. So how do you play with barometric pressure and the moon?
Well, barometric pressure, just basically high pressure days. And this was from hunting and screwing up and not having any luck and all this stuff. Back in my earlier days, I loved hunting overcast days. I thought they were great. In my mind, I thought the deer thought that it was getting darker or wasn't getting light yet, and they would be moving more. And I would go out and hunt these overcast, dreary days, low barometric pressure, and not have much luck at all. And I would just be disappointed. I'm like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? What I found later is that in October, some of these dreary days, you still have great deer movement. But when you get into November, and you're still the rut's going to affect everything, whatever. You get into November, December, and I hunt a lot in January. Those deer, unless it's a real nasty cold snap, they don't move that well. They're kind of drowsy or whatever on those overcast days is what I've seen. And by looking at what Mark Drury's writing and talking about and all this stuff, everybody else has seen the same thing. When you go out on these bright sunny days, it's high pressure. After, let's say, a storm, it seems like the deer are in a great mood. It's like going into town, back when I was a teenager, and, your first warm 80-degree day, you got people running around everywhere.
Yeah.
It just makes humans get in a great mood, and I think it does the same thing for deer.
Yeah, they get that warm, that sun on them, they're a little warmer in their beds, probably getting more sun on them. Makes them want to get up and move a little bit. They got a little bit less stress on them. Man, I'm learning a lot from you. Thanks a lot for coming on, dude. This is awesome. This is one that I'm going to have to listen to like 3 times to absorb everything I already know. So,
well, you may listen to it a couple times and think, wait, he's all screwed up.
No, like I said.
I'm just saying what works for me, and I compare it to what I listen to what Mark Drury has to say and several of these other people, and I just compare it to my sightings and stuff. And it goes along with what he's saying. Like the pressure days back 20 years ago, I hunted all the Drury overcast days with low pressure, and it just wasn't working out for me. Now the high pressure days and stuff are working out a lot more, and especially using the moon and then coinciding with weather fronts. You get a stagnant period that the weather doesn't change for a while. The only thing you really have to go off of is the moon, because the deer get in like kind of a routine, and a lot of times they're just laying on their belly. You use the moon to actually get in tighter to these areas and try to catch them moving away from their bed or back to their beds. And then if you get a weather front coming through, that changes the game completely. Just for instance, in 2013, when I went out to Iowa, me and Josh McAllister, who you podcast before, we went out there and we got out there around October the 30th. And it was dead. You didn't see a rub along the edge of the field. It was just like there wasn't no bucks. But it hadn't rained for almost a month and a half to 2 months. On the 1st, they had a rainstorm come through, and it rained for like a day. And it was right after that rain was getting ready to quit, it seemed like these deer come out of the woodwork. I mean, there was bucks running everywhere, and they weren't out there running does. They were just in a great mood. I mean, because they've been in a stagnant weather stage for like a month and a half, and it was hot. This brought in colder temperatures and moisture that they hadn't had because the ground was like dust. And we had some great hunts for the next, Josh ended up killing one, I think, the day after the front, and mine was like 2 days after the front.
Nice. Yeah, I'd never thought about that. So, in November, if you're having just a normal everyday November days, and then it's cold, or even in December, then you have that little warm up, of 10, 15 degrees, it might be worth going out and try to get on a buck. Because I'm always thinking, the cold weather's got to get them moving, and you think, well, it's a little warmer today, they're probably just going to bed up, you know what I mean? But that warmer weather, I'm thinking it's warmer so they don't need to get up, you know what I mean? But maybe that little bit of warmer weather gets them up. Yeah,
one thing he talks about is just variance from average. Even if it's warmer during the late season, not early, but if it's warmer during the late season than it is, just at normal. Because if it's been 20 degrees for 10 days, they're just going to be into whatever they're doing. But if it comes into 45, then it's going to be different. It could be better.
Sure, and like I said, last November, we had, at least average temperatures, if not below average, cold temperatures. And in my opinion, it made for a great rut. And also, the full moon was around. It was, I don't know what it was. It was somewhere around the beginning of November, first week or so in November, and it seems like the deer moved a lot better. And I never killed one in November, but I had some good opportunities, passed up a couple of nice bucks. So it was good movement, good weather. But my problem was in Illinois last year when I was hunting, we didn't have any weather fronts. We just had that cool temperature, and it was north winds. And this farm I was hunting was set up for south winds, and it just put the screws to me. I couldn't hunt my the stand places that I wanted to hunt, and it was like a week of north winds, and I like it to change. That way, it gives me more opportunity to take advantage of buck movements. So, but it's November and anything can happen, so you still got to be out there.
Mm-hmm. Did you do anything for the 2016 supermoon?
Oh, 2015?
Maybe that's whenever the last supermoon was, because I went hunting. I was off a whole week for that, and it just was not. It wasn't very good where I was hunting at.
Yeah, and I didn't. And I know what you're talking about. I didn't. Like I said, I didn't notice anything different than normal. Now the supermoon, I don't know. I didn't notice anything different than normal.
I would say they were calling for gangbusters during that thing. I mean, I had a shadow walking into the stand, you know. I'm like, oh man, this better be good. You know, I mean, it looked like I could reach up in the sky and touch the moon walking to the stand. And, you know, where I was at, I mean, they might have been locked down for about first 3 days of it. And then the rest of it was just kind of normal. I didn't see nothing too crazy from the last super moon that we had.
Sure. And like I said, it all depends on where you're hunting. I mean, especially if you're hunting during the rut, they could be over one ridge and there's 20 deer running around, and you could be sitting there in the dead zone and nothing. And then you look at the moon guide and say, well, I didn't see anything. This thing's a piece of crap. It's not working. Well, it's the rut, and you're just in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
And it's like luck of the draw. And like I said, I hate hunting the rut unless I'm out of state. If I'm out of state, I don't have a particular deer I'm after. I know how to hunt pinch points, stow bedding areas, and stuff like that. And I just take advantage of bucks traveling, moving from farm to farm, and trying to kill a good solid deer. In my home state, you know, the rut, I dread it. I love the end of October, but I dread when it starts getting around the 4th and 5th. It's just because I know the buck that I'm after, if I haven't got him killed by then, who knows where in the heck he's going to be.
Right. And, I mean, I remember hunting that week and having a tough 3 days, but after them 3 days, it just seemed like the light switch was kicked. I wasn't in the stand 10 minutes, and I had a nice buck chasing a doe right out in the middle of the field, and then the rest of the afternoon was just on fire. And then the next couple of days, it just seemed to keep up the activity. So I was just wondering if you had seen anything where you were at.
Like I said, I move around a lot hunting, and in November especially. You just got to scout and move around, and it can be some lonely hours on stand. You know, if you're in the right spot, you just got to put the time in. And that's why I like I said, I like hunting in October and December and January, because the deer are on a routine pattern normally. And by moving around, scouting and hunting different spots and hunting deer sign, you can get on deer a lot easier and better. And then once you find that sign, you can either jump in there and hunt it, or you can, you know, set back just a little bit until either the weather or the moon tells you they're going to be moving that evening, and then jump in there and take advantage of it.
Right on, man. This is some super solid intel. So I know you're really big on hunting one deer, and I'm sure we could have a whole podcast on this, but we're getting into the hour mark here. So if you could just give us some baseline pointers of hunting one particular deer and how you accomplish this, what would you say are your keys to success on that?
Oh, just being persistent, I guess, and passing other deer. And like several of the bucks that I've killed, some of them I passed up before I actually killed them. Let's say, for instance, on one farm it's a small farm. I had 2 bucks that frequented that farm. One of them was in the mid 170 inch range, and the other one was mid 160s. Well, I was hunting that mid 70 range buck, and I ended up passing up the mid 60s because I'm after one in the 170s. So, but I was kind of limited because of the acreage I was on. The deer weren't staying on my farm, so basically I had to hunt the outskirts of my farm trying to catch them coming onto it. So it was tough because you got to be disciplined enough to stick with your target buck. But I hunted that buck, and in November, I had 4, at the end of October, beginning of November, I had 4 encounters with it. And then that thing disappeared off the face of the earth around November the 6th, 7th. And I hunted him until the end of the month. And in that meantime, I passed up that other buck that was in the mid-160s. And when I finally got in my head, it was pushing December the 1st, that buck was gone, then I decided, okay, I got to switch gears and I'm going after this other buck. And I already knew by hunting that farm on where this other buck's travel routes and stuff were and what he was doing. So when the weather was right, we had a snowstorm coming in that night, and I jumped in there and took advantage of it and killed the buck on the first hunt, first set. So that worked out great. But like I said, most of the bucks that I've killed over the years that I'm hunting, I have a history with. Let's say I find a set of sheds off of them. I have pictures of them for 1 or 2 years in a row, and I decide that that's my target buck. And I know from past on what his kind of habits were, but it doesn't mean they're going to change. They're not going to change, because as the buck gets older, things change. It's just like I like referring them back to, a person growing up. Back when I was, back a buck when they're a year and a half, 2.5 years old, they're about like a 14 or 15-year-old. They're just running around crazy, doing all kinds of stuff. They're kind of scattered. When you get to be about 3.5 or whatever, they're more like a 21-year-old. They're running, looking for all the ladies and all this stuff. They're just running everywhere. You can get pictures of him everywhere. When they turn 4.5, they kind of settle down a little bit, about like an adult does when they're maybe in their 30s. But then when they get 5.5 to 6.5-year-old, they don't run after the women like they do. They kind of sit back and get 1 or 2 or whatever, and they don't move as much. And their home range shrinks. So you got to get right in there on top of them to locate them and kill them. So, if you're hunting let's say a 300-acre farm, there may only be, if you're hunting a 5-6 year old buck, there may only be a 40-acre place where that thing spends his daylight hours. And if you're hunting on the outskirts of that and different places like that, you may never see him except during the rut.
So I want to pick your brain about something. I got a buck I've been chasing for 3 years. I think he's 6.5, at least 5.5. Last year, he may be older. I don't know. I just know I got 3 years of trail cam pictures of him. Last year, found both of his sheds. He had a bunch of stuff broke off. I gave him a 16-inch spread. He's way wider than that, but he would have been in the 174 range last year. So that would be my biggest buck by far. So what happens with him is the last 3 years I've had him in velvet. He's been there. Then he's left. And then I get him the 20th through the 30th of November. He's coming back for like a late rut maybe in my area. So do you think, and I finally noticed last year, and then he'll stay for, the first part of December. Do you think that even though he is a little older, that he should be more patternable now to follow that same schedule? Or do you think now that maybe his home range shrunk anymore and he might not come back for that late rut, early December period?
Well, it sounds like, from what I'm getting from what you're telling me, is that the buck definitely doesn't live on your place. He stays somewhere else, and he just frequents your place on certain dates. Me, what I would bank on is, okay, where have I seen him at in the past, and why is he traveling that area on this place at, later part of the rut? And then I can't necessarily say I would just target that buck, but I would target other bucks on farms that are more huntable, that I have basically control of, their home range, let's say. But then when it got to later on in November, let's say on the date that you have had pictures of him in the past, I would jump in there and concentrate and hunt that area for him, that specific time frame.
Yeah,
because
I think that's...
Yeah, because when he's living somewhere else, you don't have no control of that. And like I said, I hunt the biggest buck I can find that's huntable. It's hard for me to hunt a buck that I don't have access to where he lives. It's just women of prayer. What are you just hoping that he crosses the fence one day and comes over there?
Yeah,
it's just tough. So you got to hunt a huntable buck. Now, if I was you, I would hunt maybe other deer, but during that time frame, I would jump over there and hunt that specific buck in that area.
That's some great advice,
and something
man.
something could change. I mean, a lot of times these older deer, they get their butts kicked by these 4.5-year-old, 3.5, 4.5-year-old bucks, and they move their home range. Just all of a sudden, they stayed over here on this farm for, the first 4 or 5 years of their life, and they've been the dominant buck over there the last year or two. Well, then you got a scrappy, 5.5-year-old, 130-inch junk buck that runs their butt off. And he could end up relocating over on your farm.
Yeah.
And by scouting your farm and running cameras, you'll know if he pops up. You know what I mean? But if not, and you're wanting to target that buck, then I would just, I would kind of leave that area alone, maybe run some cameras, scout just a little bit, and then jump over there when it's shown the last couple of years when he's shown up. Because usually they're pretty consistent when they show up. The same kind of time frame.
Okay, man, I'm jacked about this. I'm telling homie, I'm game planning for like first week of December right now. Like I got some off the wall weird tactics that I'm gonna throw at this deer, but I cannot kill him. I've tried the normal stuff, and that this year is possibly probably the last year I'm gonna be able to hunt this piece of ground because it's gonna sell. I'm not gonna be able to lease it, so I'm gonna go kind of a little crazy, and I'm either gonna blow it or I'm gonna succeed. But
wouldn't you rather blow it?
I'd rather
blow it than just nothing.
I mean,
obviously you want to succeed, but wouldn't you just rather be?
I'd rather
in
not
there and
hunt
blow it?
safe, or I'd rather hunt, not hunt safe, and then if I just hunt safe like I did last year
and never see him,
I'd be like, well, that was a waste, when I could have done all this other.
So right now you're taking it like him blowing.
Yeah, I'm taking like him. Like me getting in there. And,
you do something radical.
Yeah.
You see him, and then he blows. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm still going to have the wind, but I'm going to be hunting in some places that I've never hunted before.
Right.
And maybe closer to him. I feel like I have a very good idea where he's bedding in December. Like, I think I got him pegged. Like,
gotcha.
I think he's switching his bedding area after the rut, and he's coming back, and he's literally bedding in like this 10-acre piece of grass and timber, and I don't even know how many days of trail cam pictures I got of him right after dark. Right after dark, and he's going the same direction. And if I would have noticed it last year, but I was always like, I don't want to pull cams. I want to, but if I would have went in there and pulled cams, I could have killed him last year. But
that's why you need a cell cam.
Yeah, I got a couple. I got a couple now. I got a couple now.
Well, let's not even get into that.
Yeah.
And you could take complete advantage of that if you know where he's bedding at, and you understand where he's headed, so you know where he's feeding at. Use these weather fronts and moon times to jump in there and take complete advantage of. But try to take your first time in, as they always said, the Virgin said, is the greatest thing ever. Make sure when you go in there, you don't go in there to see him. You go in there to kill him.
Yeah.
So make sure you're set up right and get it done when you're in there. So
one other topic about this buck before we move on, because I'm obsessed with. I call him Mr. Freeze because I've set in a tree stand, because late season is the only time I can kill this deer. And you've hunted Illinois in late season. It gets cold up here, man. It gets nasty. The wind blows, and I have froze my butt off for this buck. So last year he was real active on scrapes. I got pictures of him on scrapes, and he was busted off a lot of, he busted off his G4, a bunch of kickers, one brow, or two both split brows on each side got busted off, and he was still 174 after all that. But,
jeez.
Yeah, he's 17 points. He's mainframe 12. It's just insane. He's got 7 points, mainframe points on one side. He doesn't have a lot of tine length. He's massy. He's got matching inside kickers that are 6-8 inches long. He's just insane. He's got split 2s, split 3s on one side.
Sounds like it.
Homie's seen multiple trail cam pictures. So he listens to me he talked about him all the time. But do you think that that late rut season, he is, the last pictures I've got with him, he was with a yearling doe. So I feel in my mind he's trying to get that last available doe, like a yearling doe coming in late. So
Sure.
you think even though that he was an older buck with having all that broke off last year, do you think me going in there in late season and being aggressive and like rattling in that area might pique his interest to come in there and maybe do some, some estrus bleats with a little rattling to, if he was that aggressive last year, do you think another year is going to alter him enough that I would spook him instead of bring him in? Because I know a lot of people say I've never rattled in a mature buck, but I have on
Sure.
my piece. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to pick your brain on that.
Well, I'm probably not one to answer that question very well because I'm more conservative and hate to give away my position. I'd rather go in there and sneak attack and take him by surprise on a normal movement than try to call. That's just me. I've, like a lot of other people, I've called and stuff before, during November, late November, end of October, and had decent luck with it. But usually they hang up 40, 50 yards down. They either get your circle and get your wind or something like that. The only time, and this is just personal preference, the only time I call anymore is if I see a buck during the rut, maybe on an out-of-state hunt or an in-state hunt that I'm wanting to take, and he's not going to come by me. And that's when I'll blow some grunts at him, maybe a snort wheeze or something, maybe even rattle if I carry my antlers with me, which I don't a lot, and try to turn him because I know that the path he's taking is not going to lead him by my tree. I almost never go out and blind call anymore, let's say, just trying to call a deer in. But that's just me. I'm not saying it won't work for you. I just hate to give away my position.
Yeah, now that you say that, I have noticed, I have rattled in some very big deer. I mean, and just giants, but they've always hung up at 60 yards, and they do like the head bob thing, trying to see if anything's over there. But I mean, a lot of young bucks, they come right to your tree, 3.5-year-olds,
Sure.
nice deer. But I've never rattled in a deer and then shot him.
Got the decoy.
Yeah, I got a decoy. I bought a decoy this year. I'm just trying to throw out everything, man. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to use that on him, though. I think that's too much. That area's too thick right there. It's just.
Late season?
What?
Late season?
Late November. It's too thick right
People
there. Yeah.
every year, giants are killed every year with somebody rattling, somebody blowing on a grunt call, or even using decoys. I've had some friends that hunt with decoys, and they've had some bad experiences, and me, I've had bad experiences trying to blind call, trying to call a deer in. So I'd rather, stay silent, don't give away my position, and hunt, and then tear down if that doesn't work, maybe move around, manipulate that area a little different, catching on a different wind, set up and hunt another virgin set and try to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
And that's just me.
I
That's
think
what works for me, but I don't want to discourage you from maybe trying that. But
No, I think that's probably the best bet because, I feel like I have a better chance because he was on my property for 15 days or so. So if I went in there and did something crazy and radical, he might be there for a day when I could have, like you said, 15 days to make a move, make a virgin set and try it out. But like in my mind, homie, like that decoy is for like Mr. Maybe or Chaos. That 4.5-year-old buck that's a stud that thinks he's like running the mill. He thinks he's owning this place. And then you go in there. Me and homie picked up a place this year that hasn't been hunted for 5 years. And we got two really solid 4.5, 5-year-old deer that are living there in that home range. And I feel like if we go in there and make a lot of noise that they haven't heard, for 5 years, and I have a decoy out there, I feel like I can trick them bucks. But Mr. Freeze, he's heard me rattle in that corner. He knows I'm probably hunting there. But what the most insane thing was about the trail cam picture I got. So I'm able to hunt that day, right? So this isn't on a mobile cam. I go pull it, and I could have hunted that day. And right when I get the trail cam pic, I'm like, oh my God, he's 15 yards from my stand, 9 a.m. with a yearling doe. He's probably there all morning. Why wasn't I in the stand? And it was on the exact opposite wind direction than I could possibly hunt that stand. I cannot hunt that stand in that wind direction, and that's when he's right there in daylight, just broadside 15 yards. But
Wow. For that class of buck you're talking about, I would look back at I would run cameras. I would scout there a little bit to see if his sign shows back up. I would jump in there. I would have different areas picked out, and I would plan on, okay, I'm going to hunt once here, and then I'm going to tear down, and I'm going to hunt over here. You know, I would bounce around a little bit and try to take advantage of those virgin sets on that buck. But if your cameras have showed you the last couple years that he shows up, let's say on the 15th, then on the 15th I'd be in there pounding it.
Yeah.
And I would be discreet about it. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't be you gotta hunt it right, but I would still, I would be in there on it, and I would be hunting the best spot in there, trying to take advantage of the wind the best I could. And maybe if there's a front coming in on the 16th, maybe I'd hunt the end of that front, right afterwards. It just depends.
I got some game plans, man. If you can't tell, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about getting in there and getting after it, because that's what we do. We get a history with this thing. I mean, I got to hold the sheds, and I know where he's living. I feel like I got this buck so pegged, but I just can't finish it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of that, to be straight up honest with you, is knowledge and skill level. I'm not at the level that I need to be to kill that caliber of deer. So that's why I want to learn, because he seems like he's always outsmarting me, but I know where he lives. You know what I mean? And I just can't finish the deal, because there's a piece to the south of me, there's a piece to the north of me, and then there's my piece. And no one else has got any trail cam pictures of him anywhere around me, and it's heavily hunted.
He's just staying right there.
He's within 200 acres. He's staying right there,
Well, some of the best advice the guy gave me just a couple years ago was, and like I said, you're trying to get all this experience and everything else. Do what you think's right, and don't be afraid and jump in there and do it. And if it doesn't happen, then back up, come up with another game plan, and go in there with the confidence that you're going to get it done. And don't be afraid of blowing it, because if you blow it, you blow it. Just get in there and try to take advantage of it and get it done before neighbor kills him, coyotes get him, who knows what. Because if you sit back and think, well, I don't want to hunt it because I'm afraid of doing this or I'm afraid of doing that, you just got to get in there and do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if you sit back, you're never going to do it.
Yeah. I wish someone would have told me that last year, because now that I have the intel, I feel like I could have got it done. But now I'm positive I'm going to go into it hardcore and chase this deer. Homie's going to get tired of me. It's going to be November 30th. He's going to be wore out, have 2 bucks on the ground, and I'm still going to be wanting him to film for me. Because like I told homie, I said, we're a 2-buck state. I shoot a 140, 150 with a bow, and a 160 walks out. I'm passing. Homie thinks I'm crazy for it, but I gotta. That a 160 is the biggest deer I'd ever shoot with a bow.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I got too much history with this deer. A buddy found the sheds while taking a youth turkey hunting. He said if I shot the deer, I could have the sheds. So I gotta finish the story. I can't just like if I lost this property and knew that deer was still out there, it would just haunt me. It would just, if I can't hunt the property, and then I knew this buck had been hunting for 3 years, still out there roaming around, right past where my old stands were,
So you're kind of in the dilemma right now as I'm in every year, because I hunt one particular buck, and that's basically what you're trying to do this year.
Man, I give props to you, man, because that would drive me insane if I did that every year.
It's tough. It's tough, but like I said, if my number one buck that I'm hunting, disappears, and I give it till up to December, if he disappears towards the end of November or whatever, I can't get a sighting or a picture or whatever, I'll bounce over to start hunting a number 2. You know what I mean? And another one that I'd like to have, and because you can't hunt a ghost, so you gotta set your goal and then go with it. I try to stick with, like this year, I'm gonna stick with my number 1 up till December, and if he disappears for 2 or 3 weeks a month, then I may have to jump over and start hunting another more huntable buck, let's say.
I will tell you that if I cannot imagine the satisfaction of shooting like if you pick one deer and then you shoot that deer.
Oh, it's got to be insane.
God, it's got to be like when you shoot, like, okay, you got a lot of bucks on cameras. You might know that buck, but then you shoot a buck, a nice buck. You're like, okay, that's good. But when you shoot a buck that you pick out at the beginning of the year, like if I shoot Mr. Freeze, that reaction video is gonna be, it's gonna be like ESPN top 10 quality. You're gonna be able to hear me Ric Flairing in Ohio, man. I'm telling you, it's just the pure emotion that's gonna come out, and that is gonna be. And the storyline that I got, it's just the work, man. It's just, I gotta.
That's
You
great.
all right?
Yeah.
There's definitely more satisfaction of hunting a particular deer and killing it than going out in November and just hoping to get a roamer.
Yeah.
Because you got so much more invested in it, and hopefully the deer doesn't know you're after him. But if the deer knows you're after it, it's always a big shocker to them too when you're letting that arrow fly.
Well,
So,
he's still there and he's still daylighting, so just gotta pray don't know him after him yet. I made some mistakes, but man, I don't know. A lot.
well, that's how you learn.
Yeah,
Making
I
mistakes.
appreciate you answering all these questions. That's like I said, we have this podcast to learn, and you hunting the same buck for so many years, I knew that you could give me some good advice, and I think you gave me some solid advice. I need to go in there, play it smart, but I need to risk it for the biscuit, homie. I need
Get
to
aggressive, yeah.
Yep.
I need to risk
Get
it for
aggressive
the biscuit.
when you know you can.
Unlike last year when I was like, I know where he's at, but if I get in there, okay, I know within 50, okay, I know within 25 acres where he's at, okay?
Right, yeah.
I know within 20, and then I know the direction he's going, but if I hunt here, I'm way safe. I'm 100% safe. He can't win me. And if he goes a little more to the east tonight, I got him. You know what I mean? So, but this year I just need to go, okay, he's right here. I know he's here. I'm going to set up right, I'm going to set up right on him. So, man, I appreciate you,
Sure.
Heath. I appreciate you listening to me talk and giving us some knowledge. I appreciate you talking about the moon with us. Like I said, I think this is one of the most informative episodes we've put out for big bucks and targeting big deer. And I can see my path as a whitetail hunter to one day I'm going to be right where you're at, where I'm just targeting one buck, and I'm going to drive myself crazy until I shoot that one deer. So.
Well, that's good. I used to have black hair. Now it's all gray. That goes a lot.
I can see why. It wasn't from the wife or the kids. It was from
Right?
that 160, 170 you've
Just
been
kept
chasing
getting
forever.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
but it's just fun, and like I said, everybody's got different goals, and I don't want to sound like I'm just something special because I'm hunting one deer. It's just a goal that I have, and to each their own.
Yeah.
I try to target the biggest buck, and that's what I do. Doesn't mean somebody else has to do it, or if I think differently of everybody for not doing it. It's just to each their own.
Yeah, that's what we say on this podcast all the time. It's the beauty of hunting is you can hunt your own hunt. And if one guy's doing something different than you, it doesn't matter, make it wrong. It's just you got a different style, I mean, that's the
Sure.
beauty of it. And then you can switch up styles. You can try random stuff,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fun.
Like I said, some of the best advice the guy gave me is, if last year didn't work out the way you wanted it to, change things up and do it differently this year. And you just gotta keep trying to grow and learn, and you can't sit back and hunt the same stands and think you're learning anything. You can have the same stands you've had on this piece of property for the last 5 years, and okay, now you're going to hunt the weather fronts. Well, they're the same stands, so you need to move. I like bouncing around and hunting new spots. Virgin sets, in my opinion, that's what it's all about. So.
Yep, if you hunt something that ain't working, don't think it's going to be different this year, and
Right.
just keep
Absolutely.
hunting it, You got to figure,
Absolutely.
keep learning, keep moving, keep figuring it out, and then eventually you're going to have, like I did a couple years ago on my leash, you're going to have that, oh, man, this is how you do this. I'm real good at shooting 140s. If they get above 140, I'm terrible at it. That's what I tell people. If they're above a 4.5-year-old, just sign me out because I'm not there on my skill level yet. I need a lot of luck.
One of the problems is it's hard to find a 5.5-year-old.
Yeah. I shot a 6.5-year-old last year that I know for sure was 6.5, but he was only 139 inches. But That was one of my greatest accomplishments of deer hunting ever. I found a buck bed that I thought was this buck. I told homie, I said, I'm going to hang a stand here. He's going to hop the fence, and I'm going to shoot him at 5 yards. And that is exactly what happened. I don't know how that worked out, but it did.
Yep.
I got lucky.
That's great.
I got lucky, and now I'm like, okay, the same thing's going to happen this year,
This
right?
stand is money.
Sure. Well,
But
that 6.5-year-old deer, just because he had a 130-inch buck, he was still a 6.5-year-old. So he
Yeah.
could have been a 200. You know,
Yeah.
so
He
there's
was
no
my-
difference.
he's my biggest bodied deer I've ever shot. Trail cam pictures off of him for a couple years. Just a giant, man. I was so happy to shoot that deer, you know, and how people online look at the rack and tell me it's a 2.5-year-old. So everybody's got a different
Well.
opinion on what's going on. So
That's for sure.
Heath, you ever sent a jawbone in of any of the bucks you killed?
Me, no. And like I said, I'm guesstimating on these ages. I don't get them official. I don't get them, you know, send them in and have them aged. I just guesstimate. And a lot of times, some of these bucks, like I killed one a few years ago. I knew he was 6.5, 7.5 because I've seen him for the last 4 years.
Right.
And I know he wasn't a 2-year-old when I first seen him. So, but I think that'd be a good idea, you know, to send in like a tooth, I think, to have it cross-sectioned and have it aged.
that's what we're going to
just
start
to-
doing this year.
yeah.
We're going to try to start because
We've got some bucks on the highlight list that, you know, if we get them down, I mean, they're questionable if they're 4.5, 5.5. There's one, you know, might be 5.5, 6.5, and then Mr. Freeze. I mean,
I should send you the picture of Mr. Freeze and
You
just let
should.
you look
You
at this
should.
deer. It's just it's early season in velvet, and he just, I mean, he doesn't even like. He just looks like
he looks
fat
like he's
and
about
nasty and-
mid-October.
Yeah, he just looks nasty,
And it's
you know what I
July.
mean? Yeah, it's
So,
insane.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we're going to do. And then we got a couple does on this new piece that we picked up that hasn't been hunted for 5 years, and they're just absolutely giant.
Yeah, so we want to send in a doe jaw.
A doe jaw. If
see-
we get one of these giant does down.
see what we get there. We're real interested. Like I said, we want to learn. You know, we love when guys like you come on and talk to us because we soak it up, because that's our goal for this is we want to learn. And if anybody can be entertained by our personalities and the way we you know, promote ourselves and then learn something on the end, I mean, that's just a bonus for us. And like I said, we save all these and we get to listen to them. And just like you were saying, if you would have known what you known when you were 20 hunting now, you know what I mean? So I told homie, I said, I got an almost 3-year-old, he's got a 2-year-old. I said, our sons will have this podcast to dig back into when they're 16, 17, when they want to start really hardcore hunting, you know. The amount of knowledge that people are going to be able to give them from this podcast is going to be insane. You know what I mean? Just like with you guys filming, the amount of knowledge that people are going to be able to gain 10, 15 years from now with you guys showing the misses, showing why you're hunting in this area. It's insane to think of how many people are going to watch that video and either get motivated or learn something. So with that being said, go ahead and
we can all learn something, that's for sure.
Yeah, go ahead and tell the people where they can find your video at, and if they want to reach out to the Learning Curve, where they can do that also.
Sure. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and it's called the Learning Curve Outdoor Webseries. And please look us up. My episode just come out last week. We have 3 or 4 other episodes, deer hunting episodes, and we have some turkeys, and we still have some more hunts coming out this fall. And like I said, we're just a small group of guys who mainly self-video, and we love telling our story and trying to share some knowledge. And that's why it's called the Learning Curve, because we're all learning this whitetail game together. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough for your time, man. Check out the Learning Curve. I've fallen in love with how they film, how they tell stories, how they teach, how they don't hold anything back, and they tell they tell the truth. They tell what really happens. I can relate to it huge, so I know a lot of our listeners can relate to it. Big shout out to you for teaching us and spending a little time with a couple of Illinois boys. So,
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Man, this episode just get me jacked for the rut. I mean, it does. Those big deer. Check out his video. The hunt that he describes in this is all on the Learning Curve. You can watch the whole entire thing. You can watch Heath's whole entire season. I learned stuff from that. I learned stuff from talking to Heath. I hope we made a good friend that we can meet up with and learn more and talk more with.
Or just ask him a question, be like, hey, we got this moon, what do you think about it?
Yeah, so...
Because, I think it's going to be something that you're going to have to watch and apply over time.
To learn.
Yeah, and then, just say, hey, Heath, I'm seeing this. What do you think about it?
Yeah, one thing that I want to mention at the end of this is if there's someone out there that's listening to podcasts and they're just like him, they're hunting, but they're not being successful on big deer, well, and... shout out to Heath. He completely changed the way he hunted. He said he completely switched everything that he'd known before and went a completely different route, and it's been super successful to him now,
Mm-hmm.
So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know me and homie, we were just talking. We looked down, and we were like 50 minutes deep, and we were like, oh, my gosh, it feels like it's been 10 minutes, But we were 50 minutes deep and we'd already had him on the phone for 20 minutes or so before we recorded, so... We
getting the good stuff.
We didn't get everything out of Heath, not even close. No. But we want to keep these, around an hour and a half, hour for you guys. And sometimes when it's good, we just go a little longer.
I say, if you see a long one come up on the screen,
there's some whitetail knowledge.
Yeah,
in that.
Something's coming out that's going to be pretty decent.
So, all right, guys, get out there, hunt, have some fun, make some memories, try to leave a legacy, and Whitetail Legacy out.